Hi, and welcome to the final portability rule training. My name is Emaris Rodriguez. I'm a housing program specialist in the Housing Voucher Management and Operations Division, and welcome today. Thank you for tuning in. Before I go into the agenda for today's training, I just want to remind you that this webcast will be recorded and will be available for future viewing if you are unable to tune in live. And I also wanted to mention that I'm not going to be taking questions on air today. However, please email us your questions to portability@hud.gov. So going into the agenda for today, I'm going to start with a quick overview, and then I'm going to go into some of the resources that we are making available to you now as it pertains to the final portability rule. And then I'm going to get into the meat of this training. I'm going to go through the changes made in the final portability rule in detail and in comparison to previous regulatory requirements. And here you have the slide numbers for your future reference. And then I'm going to go into what's coming next. Again, if you have any questions, we're not going to be taking them live today, but you can email them to portability@hud.gov. So just to give you a quick overview, the final portability rule was published in the Federal Register on August 20th, 2015. So I wanted to know that if you are using the Code of Federal Regulations, you're going to have to supplement that with the Federal Register published rule until the Code of Federal Regulations incorporates the changes. So the main objectives of the final portability rule is to clarify the portability process, to enhance family mobility, and to reduce the burden on families and PHAs by providing clarity to the process. Some of the resources that are available to you now on our website is a copy of the final portability rule as published in the Federal Register. A copy of this PowerPoint presentation will also be made available on our website. And we have also put together a sort of reference guide for you through a side-by-side comparison of the final portability rule requirements and previous requirements under previous regulations. So be on the lookout for that, and we'll make those available on our website under the Housing Choice Voucher webpage, which is listed on the slide. So let's get into what has changed through the final portability rule. And we're going to start with family briefings. So the first change that I'm going to be talking about has to do with the explanation of advantages of areas of living in areas with low concentration of low-income families. So the previous regulatory requirement was that an explanation of the advantages of moving to an area with low concentrations of poor families was provided to families who were currently living in high poverty census tracts, and it was to be provided as part of the oral briefing only. Under the final portability rule, an explanation of the advantages of areas with low concentration of low-income families is to be provided to all families, not just those that are living in high poverty census tracts. And it is to be provided as part of both the oral briefing and the information packet. Now, this is a change. It's not reflected in the published FR version of the rule, but it is going to be part of a technical correction that's going to be published on Monday, the 21st. Monday, the 1st of September. Okay, so still with the family briefing, let's get into how portability works. The previous regulation required an explanation of how portability works be provided to families that qualify to move under portability, and as part of the oral briefing and the briefing packet. Under the final portability rule, this explanation is still required, meaning the explanation of how portability works. However, there is a new requirement tied to this, and it is that this explanation includes information on how portability may affect the family's assistance through rescreening, changes in subsidy standards and payment standards, and any other elements of the portability process which may affect the family's assistance. So this is basically letting the family know that the receiving PHA may have different policies and that may affect their assistance. Under the final portability rule, information on how portability works is to be provided to every family, not just to those who are eligible to port, and as part of the oral briefing and the briefing packet as in previous regulations. So this particular point hasn't changed. Okay, getting into the list of landlords. HUD retains the requirement to provide families with a list of landlords known to the PHA who may be willing to list a unit to the family. And we also replaced the previous reference to other parties known to the PHAs for other resources, such as newspaper organizations and online search tools known to the PHAs that may assist the family in searching for a unit. So we just basically expanded that language there. We are also requiring PHAs to ensure that the list of landlords or other resources covers areas outside of poverty or minority concentration. And this was not addressed in previous regulations. So it's a new change in the final portability rule. Okay, so getting into other topics related to family briefing. The proposed rule requested comments on whether the briefing should be revised to highlight the factors and trade-offs a family should consider in deciding where to lease a unit. And based on comments received on the proposed rule, HUD determined not to require revision of the briefing, but rather that any information on selecting a unit that HUD provides is made available to families during the briefing, both the oral and the written. Okay, so let's get into processing family moves. I just wanted to note on the previous slide that the last requirement there is also going to be part of the technical correction. So it's not going to be reflected in the current publication, but it will be reflected in the technical correction as part of the regulatory language. We did mention it in the preamble, but it was inadvertently omitted from the regulatory text. So it's going to be part of that technical correction. Okay, processing family moves. So eligibility to move, this wasn't really addressed in previous regulation, and what the final portability rule is requiring is that it's clarifying that the initial PHA must determine the family's eligibility to move under sections 982.353 and 982.354. And I'm gonna get into why there is a 982.354 later on in this training. But basically, this used to be 982.314, which was redesignated into 982.354. So eligibility to move basically includes questions such as did the head of household or spouse have a domicile in the jurisdiction of the initial PHA when the family first submitted its application for participation in the HCP program? Is the family eligible to move under PHA policy on family moves, et cetera? So that's what we're talking about here. So still on PHA policy on family moves, moving into PHA policy on family moves. This was also not addressed in previous regulation, but is rather clarifying, the final portability rule is clarifying that PHA policies on family moves must be consistent with applicable civil rights laws and regulation. And what we're talking about here is specifically, the policy on PHA policy on family moves includes prohibiting moves during the initial lease term or prohibiting more than one move during any 1 year period. So that's what we're talking about here. Now the final portability rule is requiring that PHA policies on this particular topic be consistent with applicable civil rights laws and regulations. Okay, so non-resident applicants, and what we're talking about here are applicants who did not have a domicile at the PHA at the time of the first submission of their application into the voucher program. As you know, the regulation doesn't these families don't have any right to move under portability for a 12-month period from the time that the family is admitted into the program. So that's what we're talking about here. The previous regulation, under the previous regulation, both the initial and receiving PHAs had to agree to allow this non-resident applicant to move under portability during this 12-month period. The final portability rule puts that decision only on the initial PHA. So the initial PHA is the one that approves such moves during that period. Okay, so moving on to denying moves for insufficient funding. Under previous regulation provides that PHAs may deny permission to move for insufficient funding. The final portability rule incorporates the requirement to notify the local HUD field office when denying portability moves due to insufficient funding. It also provides clarity in terms of the timing of that notice to the local HUD field office, requiring PHAs to notify HUD in writing within 10 business days of the date on which the PHA determines it is necessary to deny the move. Okay, so moving on to the term of the voucher. I'm going to get into the mandatory suspension of the voucher term. So previous regulation gave PHAs discretion to suspend the term of the voucher. So that was up to PHA policy. And it gave PHAs discretion to grant the suspension for any part of the period after the family submitted a request for tenancy approval. So a PHA did not have to provide the suspension from the time the family submitted the RFTA to the time when the PHA approved or denied that request. The PHAs had the discretion to determine which part of that period they would provide the suspension for. Under the final portability rule, PHAs are required to suspend the term of the voucher, and this is for all families that are in the process of leasing a unit, not just for families that are porting. And the suspension starts under the final portability rule when the family submits the RFTA, and it ends when the PHA notifies the family in writing whether the request has been approved or denied. So in this particular point, there is a change. So we added the language that specifies that the suspension ends when the PHA notifies the family in writing whether the request has been approved or denied. Okay, and the basic objective of this requirement is to prevent the expiration of the family's search time while the PHA is performing administrative tasks that required for a new approval of a new tenancy. Okay, so getting into the receiving PHA's voucher term. Under previous regulation, the receiving PHA's voucher could not expire before the expiration date of the initial PHA's voucher. Under the final portability rule, the receiving PHA's voucher cannot expire before 30 calendar days from the expiration date of the initial PHA's voucher. And I'm going to show you an illustration of this concept in this following slide. So in this example, the initial PHA's voucher expires on September 30th, 2015. Under the previous regulation, the receiving PHA's voucher could not expire before September 30th, 2015. Under the final portability rule, the receiving PHA's voucher cannot expire before October 30th of 2015. Okay, still with the receiving PHA's voucher, under the final portability rule, the receiving PHA must contact the initial PHA if the family's voucher expires before the family arrives at the receiving PHA to determine whether the initial PHA will extend the voucher. This was not addressed in previous regulations, so it's a brand new regulatory requirement. And receiving PHA voucher extensions, under the final portability rule, The receiving PHA must notify the initial PHA if it has granted any extensions to the term of the voucher. This was also not addressed in previous regulation, although it was addressed in PIH Notice 2012-42. And I also wanted to note that the receiving PHA may extend the voucher beyond the additional 30 days based on its policies. Okay, so billing and administration. We changed the definition of absorption. So under previous regulation, absorption was defined as the point at which a receiving PHA stops billing the initial PHA. And we wanted to be clear that a receiving PHA can absorb at the beginning before they are billing the receiving PHA when they're processing the portability move, or they can also absorb after they have been billing the initial PHA. So this definition implied that in order to absorb a family, the receiving had to first bill the initial PHA. And we changed the definition to make that clear, that it doesn't have to be that way. So now the final portability rule defines absorption as the point at which the receiving PHA starts making assistance payments with funding under its consolidated ACC rather than billing the initial PHA. Okay, so use of email or other delivery confirmation. The final portability rule requires the use of email or other delivery confirmation for communications between the initial and receiving PHA. While email is not the only method it's not the required method of communication, it is what HUD supports as the preferred method. And this was not addressed in previous regulation. Requirement to administer assistance. Under previous regulation, a PHA with jurisdiction in the area where the family wants to lease a unit, the receiving PHA, must issue a voucher to the family. Now we provide some clarity to this particular point. The final portability rule clarifies that a receiving PHA cannot refuse to assist a portability family or refer them to a neighboring PHA for assistance. We also provide in the final portability rule that there are limited circumstances, such as a PHA in a disaster-declared area, where a receiving PHA is not required to accept incoming portable families. However, they would need prior written HUD approval to deny processing that incoming portable family. The regulation only provides one example, and the reason for that is that HUD cannot know all of the circumstances under which a receiving PHA, under which it makes sense for a receiving PHA to not process an incoming portable family, and therefore we are going to deal with that on a case-by-case basis. Okay, moving on to choosing the receiving PHA. If there is more than one, under previous regulation, if there was more than one PHA in the jurisdiction to which the family wanted to move, the initial PHA may choose the receiving PHA. Under the final portability rule, if there is more than one receiving PHA in the family's new location, the family chooses the receiving PHA. And still on this topic, the final portability rule requires the initial PHA to provide the family with the contact information for the receiving PHAs. However, there is no requirement for initial PHAs to provide additional details about the options or services offered by the receiving PHA. And the final portability rule provides that the family may request the initial PHA to choose the receiving PHA if that is the family's preference. Okay, so moving on to contacting the receiving PHA. Under previous regulation, the receiving PHA must inform the initial PHA whether it is absorbing or billing once the family requests assistance from the receiving PHA. Under the final portability rule, this decision or this communication is done at the front end. So the initial PHA must contact the receiving PHA prior to approving the family's request to move to determine if the receiving PHA will bill or absorb. And the reason for this is that this decision may have an impact on whether the initial PHA may or may not approve the move if the initial PHA has insufficient funding to allow the move. And the receiving PHA must respond to the initial PHA's request in writing. Okay, so deciding to absorb. Under the final portability rule, if the receiving PHA notifies the initial PHA that it will absorb the voucher, it cannot reverse its decision at a later date without the consent of the initial PHA. So if the initial PHA consents, then the receiving can reverse that decision and start billing. And this was not addressed in the previous regulation. And the reason for this requirement is basically to allow the initial PHA the ability to manage their programs and to avoid any burden and any burden on the family. Okay, so the initial PHA is required to send the following documents to the receiving PHA. The HUD 50058, which was also mentioned in previous regulation. Any related verification information, which was also mentioned in previous regulation. But now the final portability rule also mentions the portability form, the HUD 52665. 52665, sorry about that. Okay, receiving PHA's policies. Under previous regulation, the receiving PHA's subsidy standards are used when determining the family unit size. So that continues to be the case. However, the final portability rule expands that provision by requiring that receiving PHA's policies are used in the administration of the ported voucher. So it expands it. It not only talks about subsidy standards, it's an expansion of that provision. And this requirement also applies to policies of moving to work agencies. Okay, so let's get into changes in the administrative fee structure. Under previous regulation, the initial PHA had to reimburse the receiving PHA for 80% of the initial PHA's admin fee. Under the final portability rule, the initial PHA reimburses the receiving PHA for the lesser of either 80% of the initial PHA's administrative fee or 100% of the receiving PHA's administrative fee. And let's see an example of this so that it's a little bit easier to understand. So on this slide, you can see the initial PHA's admin fee per voucher is $60, and the receiving PHA's administrative fee per voucher is $45. So under previous regulation, the initial PHA would get to keep $12 out of those 60, and then the receiving PHA would bill the initial PHA for the remaining $48. And as you can see, the $48 is higher than the receiving PHA's own administrative fee. Under the final portability rule in the table to the right, the initial PHA gets to keep $15 out of those $60 in this example, and the receiving PHA would bill the initial PHA for $45. So as you can see in this example, the initial PHA keeps more than 20% of its own administrative fee because the receiving PHA's administrative fee is lower than the initial PHA's administrative fee. Okay, so the final portability rule also clarifies that proration of the initial PHA's administrative fee due to insufficient administrative fee funding will apply to the administrative fee for which the receiving PHA may bill the initial PHA. And this was not addressed in previous regulation. Okay, so we have some other changes that I'm gonna go through before I talk about what's next. The final portability rule adds a section on special purpose vouchers. And in particular, the requirement is that as it relates to the family report, Form HUD 5058, and SPV codes, the initial PHA must submit those codes on the 5.8, and then the receiving PHA maintains those codes as long as it is billing for the Porter voucher. Additionally, if HUD has established alternative program requirements for special purpose vouchers, initial and receiving PHAs must administer special purpose vouchers in accordance with such requirements. As I mentioned previously, 982.314 was redesignated into 982.354. So now all sections that discuss family moves are grouped together. And we also made some other technical changes to Part 982 to basically conform with the policy changes implemented elsewhere in the final rule, and also to correct an incorrect citation. So these are just technical changes, nothing substantive. Okay, in terms of what's coming next, HUD is in the process of revising the current portability notice, Notice 2012-42. And we will also be revising the portability form, HUD 526665, to conform to all applicable rule changes. Also, further training opportunities will be made available once the notice and the form are revised. So that's what to expect next. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to email portability@hud.gov. That mailbox is going to be managed by our office, so your questions will be answered as soon as possible as they are received. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope this was helpful. Please visit our webpage and get that side-by-side comparison. Get a copy of this slide deck so that you can have available as a reference guide as you're going through these changes. Thank you and have a great day.